Hello everyone and welcome! Today I've got the 1/25th scale 1978 Pontiac Trans Am back on the bench. This custom RC build has been one of my more interesting projects I've showcased on the channel recently, combining high-speed brushless electronics and a simple leaf spring rear end, all mounted to this Trans Am plastic model kit. A unique combination for sure that's certainly introduced a few challenges. However, today's the day I finally declare this car complete. I'll be wrapping up this project by finishing the body and mounting it to the chassis, and of course driving this car for the first time. As always, if you'd like to catch up with this build series and watch the videos that I posted prior, I'll be sure to leave a link to the playlist below in the description. But with that introduction out of the way, let's get this car completed. We'll pick up right where I left off in the last video. The paint on these final parts that need to be glued to the body has now dried, so I mounted each one of them. Like with the rest of this model, it's maybe not the best fit ever, but overall it looks pretty good. I'm really not that concerned with cosmetic perfection on this project. I guess I'm not too concerned with mechanical perfection either now that I think about it. In that last video, I gave this custom designed and 3D printed shallow interior piece a coat of matte black paint. Using a brush, I applied a few details such as painting the helmet and the roll cage. Obviously, the details are pretty sparse on this interior, but it's something. I glued that interior piece to the inside of the body, making sure it's nice and secure. I noticed with the interior now in place, I needed to remove some additional material from around the rear wheel wells. Turning my attention over to the chassis, as you can probably tell, this front suspension needs some work. The springs that I have installed currently aren't enough to support the weight of the chassis. To solve this issue, I removed the screws holding the lower control arms in place and then installed stiffer springs. Dialing in these little FC01 front suspension and steering assemblies can be a challenge. Obviously, as is the case here, I want enough springs so that the suspension isn't completely bottomed out. But I also don't want the springs to be too stiff to where the suspension doesn't really want to move. It's sort of a fine balance, but it's awesome when you can get it right. I just sort of messed around with it until I was satisfied with how high the chassis sits and the amount of travel. The front suspension is much better now, so I next wanted to figure out a way to mount the body to the chassis. As I've done many times before, I'm using 3D printed posts and rare earth magnets to hold the body on. The magnets do a great job of securely holding the body on while also making it very easy to remove when needed. You just need to spend some time cutting down the height of each post so the body sits as high as you want it to, and then you need to make sure that the body's positioned correctly when gluing the upper magnets in place. Unfortunately, although not really a big surprise, that rear axle I installed isn't perfectly square with the chassis, so aligning the body in a way that puts both rear wheels centered in the wheel arches isn't really possible, but I did the best I could lining everything up. At this point, I can finish up the car by installing this air cleaner that I had on hand. I used a black Sharpie to color the filter, and I installed it using some black electrical tape on the underside of the hood. Very simple, but I like how it looks. I applied one of the license plate decals that was included with the model kit. Finally, I grabbed a dual tailpipe piece out of my junk drawer and simply glued it to the right side underneath the rocker panel. Looks pretty good from the right angle. I do wish it was a bit deeper though. I might change it out for something else in the future, but it's kind of cool, sort of like an older NASCAR style passenger side exiting exhaust. That was kind of the inspiration for what I have here, though obviously without the effort of running the pipes from the engine bay. But with that part in place, the car is now complete. I'm very happy with how this finished car turned out. Of course, it's hard to go wrong with a vintage Trans Am. Of course, I did want to find out how well this car drives. I did a few laps on this indoor test track, and like I said before, this car has tons of power. This is just using a tiny percentage of the throttle. Despite trying to be careful, I did manage to flip the car in a turn and damage the rear leaf springs. Fortunately, thanks to the magic of 3D printing, it wasn't long before I was ready to go with a fresh set. I took the car outside, and although once again I don't really have enough room to give the car some serious throttle, I'm at least happy that it works. I didn't want to push the car too hard, especially with the currently installed resin gears, but it held up okay. One issue I encountered was the motor's output shaft started to spin inside of the drive shaft socket, so I wasn't able to do any hard acceleration, but regardless, the car works, and I can start to work on improving the performance and durability. You can really see the car bouncing around quite a bit, especially with these rear leaf springs. The suspension is another aspect of the car I plan on experimenting with and working on improving. For now though, I'm happy that this car works, and I'm hoping to get this car dialed in and sort of use it as a test bed. Hopefully soon I can get some nice shots of it at higher speeds, as well as some fast launches. Of course, I'll be sure to include any updates in a future video, but until then, as always, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.